Let's call the March 23rd meeting of the Louisville Metro Waste Management District to order at 5:30 p.m. Do we have minutes to approve?
We do. I don't know why I didn't put it on the screen, but we do have minutes that was sent out this afternoon. I apologize for the late document email. Was pressure on to get this annual report done before this meeting. So that was my primary concern. So if you don't have that minutes, let me know. I'll pull them up on screen.
Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Does anybody have any additions, deletions, or changes to the minutes as they were printed?
No. Again, compliments to the person who recorded the proceedings of the meeting. It's well done.
It's a combination of me and Karen fixing all my typos.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
We have a motion for approval by Mary Rose.
I'll second that.
Second by Susan.
Yep.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, let's take a vote on the March 23rd minutes.
That was Deidre.
Are you calling roll, Pete?
We haven't typically called a roll on.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking. We'll just do a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nay or no. Hearing none, the minutes pass.
Bob, may I just ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I understand that if we're at these meetings, when we're vote, we have to be visible on screen. And when we have this up, we can't see each other. I don't know if that's an issue because we can be seen, but it's a little bit disconcerting to vote and not be able to see anybody.
That is correct as far as the Open Meeting Act goes. Bob is at a position where he can kind of listen. If he can't see, he can't vote unless he can be seen. But we do have a quorum. So, Bob, if you're hearing me, then really the only thing that you can do at this point is listen. You can't vote.
Yeah, I understand. I'm continuing to try to get a video, but I haven't yet.
Well, but my point is none of us can see people. All we see is, or at least all I see on my screen is the agenda.
Well, there is a way that you can.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah,
For
instance, on my screen, I have people across the top of the screen and the agenda takes up most of the bottom. And then I can scroll it left or right and look at whoever is here. And then I think there's another way that I'm not familiar with, but I think you can get everybody on the screen, but then you probably can't see stuff like the agenda.
Okay, well, I can see whoever's talking. Maybe I just need to rearrange this or something.
Yeah.
There's a setting up there that you can select grid or the person speaking. You just have to change that. I mean, it's not a problem if I unshare for the vote, if that becomes an issue. Okay, thank you. I wanted to be sure that we were doing everything correctly, mostly. Understand. My apologies. I misunderstood your concern. Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Pete, you want to do the budget report?
Budget report, we're still well ahead on our revenue. We're at 89% of our license fees and citations. I would anticipate that again being somewhere in the 125% range. We're way ahead on our recycling receipts because of the rebound on the commodity prices. We're getting paid pretty good for the materials that we collect at our staffed recycling centers. So all in all, including the extra license fees that were paid, we're well ahead of schedule. Okay. And I'm not sure, just Mary Rose, are you trying to annotate?
No, I'm not trying to do anything. Am I doing something? I was trying to get it on where I could see people, but I obviously don't know how to do that.
Okay,
So,
we're good. I think I got it taken care of.
okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It just took my cursor away. Okay, so in expenses, we are still running well under our expenses. I think at our last meeting and even the meeting before that, I had mentioned that we were having some issues with Veolia and their billing. I went back and I looked at the issues, and currently they billed us on 2/22 of last month, or shortly thereafter, 2/28. And they gave us invoices totaling 109,503. So if we do that, if we add that in, then the contractual services goes to 48% instead of 19%, which is where I would expect it to be. And that is, we still have January and February is yet to be billed. So we're that kind of gives us a much better picture of where we are with our expenses. Other than that, we're doing very well. Our balance with our rollovers is $2,685,191. Now, well, does anybody have any questions about the budget as I presented it? Okay, there was I think Bob Lee had brought up a question last month on whether or not that we could invest some of these funds so that we can gain some interest. And my understanding from posing that question to our Office of Management and Budget was it is possible under certain conditions. And they asked me two questions. The first one being, when would we expect to access these funds, and for what purpose would the funds be used? I.e., is there some sort of special project would they like to fund? So, in my understanding is that we would want to be able to access these funds at any time instead of maybe at certain time periods. What is kind of in mind when we want to be able to utilize these funds? Are we putting them away? So they just had these concerns, and I think that depending upon our answers will kind of tell us where we need to go.
This is Bob Lee. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that it's good that we have the answer. We probably don't know for sure what we want to do with it. And it surely, for me, it would anticipate that we wouldn't do the whole balance. It would be maybe half of the balance or whatever, but I would like to just simply consider the situation, and I wouldn't think that we would need to vote or consider the answer at this particular meeting.
Okay. Anybody, any other questions, concerns?
You all had talked at one time, Bob, about maybe having a board retreat. And this seems to me to be one of the questions that we should maybe discuss at a board retreat where we're all face to face and thinking about our kind of long-term future. That, now that we have kind of these answers from Pete and what we should be considering about them, I don't know how soon that might be, but anyway, that's just my thought on it.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate, something to discuss it if we do a retreat or something like that. I think that's a good idea, Mary Rose.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, as for expenses over 5,000, we have just one expense that's kind of already gotten ahead of itself, which is $10,044, which is just two payments for the front load truck, which we've already approved at another meeting. At the last meeting, I did tell you guys that there was a late charge that was added, which added almost $1,000 to our last payment. That we was working to resolve that $1,000 of late fees, and we have not gotten it resolved yet. We've kind of started this conversation with them, but from our point of view, we shouldn't have to pay late fees. It shouldn't have been late, agreed, but sometimes getting through a process such as our Office of Management and Budget can take just a little bit longer than what's needed. So there's no need to really vote on this. I'm just keeping you guys informed as to what's going on.
Were they trying to collect late fees? Did they notify you that they wanted the late fees?
Well, they didn't notify me because it goes directly to our Office of Management and Budget. So I'm kind of blind to how they handle that.
It seems like to me in the past that city and metro never paid late fees. That was kind of I don't know, policy or precedent or whatever, but they just never paid late fees.
We typically do not. So it's basically the discussion that we need to get them to understand that we don't pay late fees. So I think that's where we're at.
Are there any other questions about what Pete has presented, or any of the detailed budget statements that are in the packet? Okay. Well,
The next item on the agenda is
action
items. So the 2021 annual solid waste management report is due April 1st, and we need a bit of a certification from Mr. Schindler to be able to send that in. What I'm going to do is, I'm not really going to send the whole report because it's several hundred pages long. A lot of it is forms and things that, if you really wanted to get into the details of it, you could. But what I've done is I've taken most of the numbers and statistics and some of the highlights and put it together here for you guys to see. And if there's any questions, we can certainly go look at the report. So reporting activities for 2021, we had 48 recycling facilities that reported to us, 8 landfills or transfer stations that reported, 46 collectors of garbage or bulky waste, and 2 composters. When we took all of the data, all of the recycling material, all the disposal, and we put those numbers together, that's how we come up with our diversion rates. This first one is a rate that the waste district has kept since probably back in the early 90s when they first started doing it. And I try to put it up here as a matter of years so that we can kind of see where we're trending. So the annual recycling rate right now is 25.6, which is a little bit lower. I think our peak year was 2017 when we was at 27.1. We've always had a goal to get to 27%, to be above that 27%. So right now we're running below where we're at. We did recycle, it's 2020 being the COVID year, you just don't know what you're going to get. So we're actually getting back to where we were in 2019. You can see that the residential commercial material recycled by year were pretty close to where we were. and the same thing with the amount of material that's landfilled. So I think we're getting back to normal. You know, where we definitely want to improve this rate. So residential and commercial is a combination of what we collect at curbside, but it's also what's taken in at drop-off sites. It's also stuff that's taking in from material that's taken in from at salvage yards that are kind of from the residential or commercial sector. It can include lots of things. Yard waste, ink cartridges, used motor oil, a lot of things. So a lot of stuff that goes into that commercial residential rate, which is a little bit different than our recycling and diversion rate for all commodities, which brings into account construction and demolition material. C&D material is heavy, so it has a large impact on our numbers. So as you can see, again, we're right back to where we was in 2019. We have a 50.2% rate, which is good. 975,000 tons recycled in both of those years. And we had just about the same amount that's going into the landfill. So really, we're right back to where we started before the pandemic. And if you guys have any questions on these, let me know. The curbside rate is, there was some differences this year, which was a little bit surprising. As you can see, the overall rate countywide for curbside is we're recycling 16.6% of that material, which really is a pretty low rate in the grand scheme of things. So, you know, when I went to look at it, the amount of garbage year over year was down 0.5%. Recycling was down 4.7%, and yard waste was down 20%. Yard waste can have a really big impact, but I think that, you know, yard waste can be variable based upon, did we have storms? Did we have people off during the pandemic doing a whole lot more yard work? You know, those types of things. Was it a wet season? So did we have a whole lot more grass growing in the summer? So all of those things can really impact that yard waste rate. So I wouldn't play too much into that. But overall, that reduced our overall recycling rate from the curbside down 10%. But it's really going from 18.5% to 16.6%. So not really going in the right direction. And I think one of the things that was actually disappointing is it seems as though there are actually more recyclers in the suburban area year over year, but the amount of recycling actually went down. So it just seems like it could be that we're doing a better job of keeping contamination out. So we really, it's hard to really tell what's behind that. The participation rate. And I like to look at this in a couple different ways. One is a participation rate, one's availability rate. Keep in mind that there are a lot of people that in contracts in the urban services districts and HOAs, it's pretty much a participation rate. In a suburban area, all it is an availability rate, so to speak. So overall, and we compare this with census data on number of occupied households, we make that comparison. In 2021, we're sitting at 97.3% of households have garbage collection. It's a really good number, but that also means that we've got probably several thousand, probably 5,000 or 6,000 households out there that don't have service. What are they doing with their waste? We did increase on the percentage of households that have recycling, but I think the biggest part of that jump was a better number from the urban services district when we started to deploy recycling carts. We had more recyclers than we thought we did, which is a good thing. but it also adjusted our numbers and made us get to 40.8%. And then the yard waste is pretty much, there's been a little bit of a drop on the percentage of people that has yard waste collection, which I think is actually a positive thing because we would prefer that people handle their yard waste at home. Our goal is to have that 90% of the people participating in recovery by 2042. So, as it stands right now, I would say that rate is sitting at 40.8%. Cost of services, and I do need to talk a little bit about this. We've been discussing the metrics that we're keeping on this, not being really good for us to kind of see and tell the whole story about the cost of services in Jefferson County. What you see here is the overall rate for the individual haulers, and you can see the average garbage rate per month is $16.98 per household, $6.89 for recycling, and $12.24 for yard waste. A lot of different scenarios that go into that, but when you add everything in together and divide it by the number of households, that is the average cost. And then if it was an all-inclusive service, that would be $36.09 per month. That's up probably the biggest jump that we've had in, since I've been looking at it, which, has been about 7 or 8 years. I think a lot of it has to do with COVID and the, trying to keep workers. The cost of materials have went up. So I think that would be reflective of why that rate has increased a significant amount. Now, on the backside of that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it's right off the top of your head, you may not have this. Do you have have you seen any figures to show how this pricing average in Jefferson County compares to the rest of the country? At one time, I think we were lower than the national average, but that's been a while since somebody addressed that. Just off the top of your head, have you seen anything from US EPA on that lately?
I don't, and I'm not sure if we can find an apples to apples.
That's the problem, apples to apples. Yeah.
Yeah. We can kind of compare it to, our region. And I think that we can come, that would be our best bet. But it's something that we can kind of take a look at.
It's just a curiosity. I wouldn't waste a lot of time on. It's not something I'm demanding you present to us.
Okay. On the flip side of that, as far as being able to investigating if we can do this a little bit different, we have to report these numbers because it's required. But,
right.
We can give a little bit more substance behind it. So I have reached out to all the reporters of these numbers, and I gave them a new chart that kind of broke things out into the major categories. I'm asking for their input first, and then after I get that input, I'm hoping that we can get together and kind of discuss. I've only received one response so far, so I really don't know how it went over. Hopefully, either they like it and they're working on those numbers, or they're trying to come up with a better scenario, which I would, I don't have a problem with. If somebody can figure out another way for us to collect it than what I presented to them, I've made that clear that I'm interested.
Pete, this is Bob Lee.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the fact that you sent that out, and it's just for us and I would anticipate for other companies, just going to take some time in order to get through that. And I would anticipate that we could, as our company, could have our information in before the next meeting.
Okay, so you've seen the chart?
I have, yeah. Haven't studied it, but I've seen it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, that's good. And, it is more information. So I would assume that it's going to take a little bit longer to gather. So um, good. I'm glad. I think we're on our way to maybe trying to come up with something new.
Appreciate the effort.
No problems. Does anybody have any questions on the different diversion numbers? Curbside, commercial, residential, or overall cost of services before I move on? Great. Okay, so also as part of the annual report, we have to give a summary of our litter abatement activities, regardless of grant. Plus, we also have to show how we used our grant money so that we have to certify that we've spent it right. So what you see here is not all of our expenses, unfortunately. With the Clean Collab coming online early in this year, it was very confusing as to how we can track all this stuff. So you almost see, in a lot of ways, only half a year. So let me go through it. First off, we cleaned probably 3 to 4 times more roadway than we cleaned the previous year, which is great. We picked up a huge amount of bags, which I have to report it in bags for the report, but let me see.
So what you're having, it's for the state report, you're having to say, take suburban street cleaning and convert that to some kind of bag equivalent.
I do. So they consider every bag, a bag weighs 20 pounds. So if I had 100 pounds of waste, that would equal 5 bags. That's the way that they want us to report it. Obviously, when you're in here and I could tell you how many pounds it is, just a second.
So basically, for our purposes in reviewing it, the real raw data is under the miles category. It
is. And I would tell you that we picked up 3,111,305 pounds of litter.
Wow.
And that's 1,695 tons. We also picked up over 1,000 tires, and we picked up like 3,855 other items, which would periodically include a couch. It could include a vehicle wreckage that's left over from an automobile accident. Just, you never know what you're going to see on the side of the road. So we made a pretty big impact by changing to this clean collaborative. But as everybody can see, we still have a ways to go. I know that the interstates don't look very good right now. And part of that is, it's really a state contract that handles those interstates, and the contract's lapsed again, and they're just getting those back up. So there's still a lot of discussion. The price increased on them significantly. So we're hoping that they can get those interstates cleaned soon, because they're starting to look bad again. As far as cost goes, the labor, we spent really about $230,000 just on personnel, although that number is actually higher because we trying to gear up. There's times that we're having trouble keeping people in positions. So that number could be significantly higher. Contractual, we spent $316,000. Part of that was paying people to pick up litter along the highway, the expressways, which is really pretty expensive. But that was in addition to what the state was doing. And, that was our attempt to get things done. And then the partnership with the Louisville Downtown partnership was using some of their people clean an extended central business district. So it was just kind of expanding outside of their normal boundaries. We was paying for their people to do those cleanings out there too. So it does not include the equipment purchases that was done through the Clean Collab, which is probably another 800,000. Supplies, we didn't really charge a whole lot for the supplies. A lot of that is coming out of the Department of Public Works budget. The disposal, you can see that we did not charge that to the grant. As you can see at the bottom in the yellow, it's a 0. That goes into our normal waste stream for the Department of Public Works. So the department is paying that $40,000 for the litter. The interdepartmental, that is for Brightside, and that was for the I think it was a campaign. Oh, I can't remember the name of it, but you'll see it on bus shelters and around town. So that is it. We didn't charge equipment cost, which we typically runs probably pretty close to the same rate as labor to operate a packer or to operate some of the pieces of equipment. So all in all, while we do list the total spent on litter, all in all, it's $616,000. I think next year we'll have a better handle, and that will probably be upwards of $900,000 to $1 million that we spend on litter, which is a big amount. But unfortunately, we still have litter on the roadways. So that brings us to our litter campaign education. So hopefully we can get that going soon. Is there any questions about the litter? I have all of the invoices, everything that I've put to this grant. I've had to have invoices and backup to be able to prove it that we have expended these funds. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Pete, this is Bob. Just a question, and it might be part of the grant situation. Why would we not include disposal and equipment cost?
Well, we should, but we didn't charge it to the grant. The grant we ran out, I mean, once we're over $378,000, it didn't really matter as far as the grant administrators. They just wanted to see us, did we spend all $378,000 on eligible expenses? Yes. Is equipment an eligible expense? It is. But it really didn't matter when it came to the grant because we had already spent all the money anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what you said just a second ago is really pertinent. I mean, we spent $616,000 this year basically cleaning up after people, and your estimate that it's probably closer to $1 million is still it's a crying shame when there's so much need in various parts of the metro budget that we're having to spend almost $1 million cleaning up after people, which makes our future enforcement efforts and education efforts all the more important.
Right. I think two things that we're hoping to do. One is you guys have authorized us to purchase 100 litter baskets of the mushroom style for litter along the suburban arterials. The Department of Public Works is going to pay for staff, and the Clean Collaborative is going to pay for a piece of equipment that we're going to be able to get that out there on the suburban arterials. If you notice, there is not a lot of litter baskets in the suburban arterials because there really isn't a contract for emptying them. What we have out there is when, like Brightside or a Metro Council person placed it there with an agreement with a business nearby that says that they'll empty it. And lots of times that business leaves or you get a new management. And then what we have is an overflowing litter basket with nobody to empty it. So the situation just looks worse. So this is going to resolve a lot of the issues about having litter baskets in that suburban area along those major arterials. The second part of it, as part of that point, was I'm really hopeful that we'll get that RFP for the outreach campaign. I know that I think Karen got an update on that. Can you give us an update on when that RFP is going to be dropped, Karen?
Yeah, Max said he didn't have an exact time frame, but he did say days. So we'll definitely keep you posted when it is officially posted.
Yeah, which is great. So hopefully in the future, we're having less litter as well.
Can I ask a question, Pete?
Sure.
Last time we talked about Brightside and we were going to renew our agreement with them, but we wanted to get the rest of the paperwork that they owed us. Is this the grant that they owed us paperwork for? And did we get the paperwork?
We got the paperwork within 2 or 3 days. So Bob did sign the agreement and we do have an MOA in place.
Okay, and this is the grant that we were charging them against, charging the.
Yes, this was the 60,000 that we would give them, and they did agree that they would do the cash for trash. So that was good.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Also in the report, we had to report on enforcement activities. Last year, we issued 580 notices of violation, 238 citations. We had 6 people appeal citations and we won every one of them. We did impound 11 vehicles for illegal dumping. And I could tell you that all of those are down from where we have been. We have been we only have 3 officers that are out there doing solid waste enforcement for the entire county. And we get upwards of 6,500 requests a year. So we've been down 1 officer, and also we've had troubles with COVID as well. So that's why those numbers are down. Typically they're much higher, but we're getting our legs back underneath of us. We've impounded probably 5 vehicles in the past 2 weeks, I would say, which is good. And we hope to have, actually we're down 2 enforcement officers right now. So we have 1 that's in the hiring portal. We've hired 1 for 1 position, I think 3 times, and they don't show up. So, we're dealing with the same issues that everybody else is trying to deal with. So does anybody have any questions about our enforcement?
Excuse me, refresh me on when a vehicle is impounded, what is the process that a violator has to go through to get that vehicle back? So
the ordinance is set up that after we make that impound, they have that vehicle has to stay in the impound for 72 hours. It's on a 72-hour hold. They cannot get it out unless they have paid all of the fines, all of the cleanup fees, all of the towing fees, which typically is about $1,000, if not more. And if they don't pay that, then the city holds it for 6 months to a year, depending upon which section that they violated in the ordinance. So I would say, Bob, probably only about 70 to 75% of the people that we impound actually go get their vehicle. The rest of them just leave it in there. The vehicle's not worth that much money.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We also list our pop-up drop-offs. You guys should be very familiar with this. This is has been one of the most successful programs that we've rolled out in quite some time. Just some quick numbers that are in the report: 5,128 participants. We recycled over 100,000 pounds of electronics, 1,600 waste tires. Oops, I put tires in there twice. 39,000 pounds of yard waste, 43,000 pounds of metal, 22,000 pounds of single stream materials, 78,000 pounds of documents. And we disposed of 1,920 pounds of expired medications, which I think is awesome. And we also had to dispose of 468,505 pounds of junk. So we anticipate another great year with this pop-up drop-off, and Karen is going to speak to that a little bit later. So with all that being said, there is a section in the annual report that requires a certification. It requires that basically the board chair makes this signature. It says that he has examined the document and believes that those people that immediately were responsible for doing it has done their due diligence, and that he believes that the information is true, accurate, and complete. It also certifies that the litter abatement grant funds were spent according to the grant requirements of KAR and KRS. So with that being said, if there's any questions that I can answer, I can do so. Otherwise, I would request that based upon my presentation and Bob's review, that the board affirm that I've done a pretty good job with the annual report and we can sign it.
Are there any other questions or comments from board members about the presentation or anything you may have looked over in what Pete sent out regarding this annual report? I think probably what we ought to do is take a vote on this action, and you'll be voting to approve the submission of this annual report to the state.
Do you want a motion, Bob?
Yeah, that would be good. Motion to approve and submit the annual report.
So moved.
Mary Rose.
I second.
Mary Rose and Susan. Sorry, any other questions or comments? Discussion. Okay, Pete, would you call the roll?
Mary Rose Evans,
Yes.
Mary Hart,
Yes.
Petra Shipley,
Yes.
Carl Brazley,
Yes.
and Robert Schindler.
Yes.
Motion passes. Unanimous vote.
And I assume the extension you got, and we're all cool on that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. You have next item up a request for paving at the Hikes Lane self-service drop-off.
Right. So you guys know that we made this deal about the district purchased the front load truck and dumpsters, and the Department of Public Works conducting the pop-up drop-offs, which is great. And we have gotten most of the sites for the front loads out, and they have been working very, very well. Where we run into a little bit of a problem is at Hikes Lane, which is the second busiest site in the city. And really, we can't put those front load dumpsters in that little narrow part of the drive through there. And we need to add some concrete or asphalt to be able to make it work there, which I think that, you know, we would spend quite a bit, but we're going to save quite a bit because we can now do it with front loads instead of these roll-offs. So what we were asking is a preliminary approval before we approach the fire department and metro facilities and ask them to do it. Because if we ask them to do it, they're going to need to find it in the budget, and it's going to be a while before it can get done, if at all. So the request, and you guys don't have to do this, but the request is for up to $25,000 for concrete. The preliminary quote is $23,000 for concrete. But I kind of didn't want to move forward with approaching the fire department or metro facilities unless I had a little bit of an approval for something from you guys.
One thing that I think you answered my question. What I was going to ask you was this going to be concrete or asphalt? And my experience has been, if it's not concrete, you end up with, because of warm weather conditions in the summer, you end up with the front wheels of the trucks and also sometimes the dumpsters sinking into the asphalt, and then you have just an ongoing maintenance problem.
I believe that to be true as well. That's why we're wanting concrete. The asphalt quote was actually $20,000. So there's for that little bit of a difference, we're definitely better off going with the concrete. One thing to keep in mind is that if it is asphalt, the dumpsters would be placed where there is yellow, the yellow highlighted area. So the dumpster would be lifted and set back down. The dumpsters themselves are not all that heavy. Where if it was a roll-off dumpster where the wheels would have to hit and then roll on down, that does tear up the asphalt a lot worse. But since we don't think that our front wheels of the truck would get off into that, if we have to go with asphalt, we can. And I don't think that it's going to get tore up.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Greg.
Just a logistics or whatever type question. Has anybody looked at is there a possibility, and I don't know, like putting them at 45 degrees or far enough apart that they could come in from the front and back so you wouldn't have to do this and still flow with the part?
That is making those by angling them. We are taking that into account here. Okay. If they had to set straight side by side, that would not be nearly wide enough.
Right.
Yeah, this is the.
You did locate them somehow differently to not have to do the concrete.
Yeah, and we probably need 7 to 8 front load dumpsters here.
You know, you need to take a close look at that, because if you go with asphalt, you need to take a close look at it, because if you angle those dumpsters so that the truck has the swing room to come in at the correct angle on the concrete, that right front wheel of the truck is going to be on the asphalt. Unless it's poured such that you have concrete coming in at angles and then asphalt pad for the dumpster itself.
Yeah, the way the truck is designed, those front wheels actually set back pretty far, and then you got the forks that extend on top of the wheels setting fairly far back from the front of the truck. I think it would clear it, but it's definitely something that we would want to look at before we spend money.
Yeah, that's my only purpose. I don't like to nitpick, but that's my only purpose of bringing it up is, I hate to spend board money and then have to spend more board money to correct something that could have been handled in the first place.
Understood.
Since this is an expenditure of board money, or at least an authorization to obligate expenditure of board money, we'll need a vote and, of course, a motion to proceed. Anybody want to make a motion?
This is Deetra. I'll make a motion that we do the concrete for the $25,000.
Okay, moved by Deethra.
Second by Susan Hart.
Second by Susan. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion or questions or comments on whether we want to expend this money or not? Okay, hearing none, since this is spending money, Pete, would you do a voice vote, please, or a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Deetra Shipley,
Yes.
Mary Rose Evans,
Yes.
Mary Hart,
Yes.
Carl Brazley,
Yes.
and Robert Schindler.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you guys very much.
Yes. Thank you all. Thank you, Pete. Moving on to old business.
Bob, can I ask a question about that just a minute?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
So I guess this makes us, as a board, the owner of this concrete. Is this on Metro land? Will we just like donate this to, I mean, obviously we'll be using it for a while. I just trying to understand how this concrete that we're paying for is who the ownership of it in the future.
Well, it's Metro. It's on Metro property, so it is on public property, and we do function as a duly authorized arm of Metro government. So I don't see that there's a real problem there on us authorizing this money, because it is going on to Metro.
Obviously, amenity that we need to do the thing that we need to do for the community.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem to me, and I voted for it. I just was trying to understand it.
Is a concern here is that we would have to make this a donation to Metro to make it official.
I hadn't thought about that.
I don't know if we have to.
We can just own the amenity that's on their property, and that would be fine. I don't think we necessarily have to donate to them. If we ever move our dumpsters out and don't need it anymore, I guess we would donate it then.
That's a good point. I'll look into it a little bit as the discussion moves forward about doing this. Like I said, this is just a early way for me to even approach the subject with the fire department and Metro facilities. It wouldn't do me any good to even approach them if I didn't have something in my pocket. So I'll look into the correct process there as I do that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Pete. Old business.
108 Irton Lane Self-Service Recycling Center, the busiest site in town. We have not been able to find a spot close by, and we have a lot of people looking. Closing date is officially March 28th, which is next Monday. We've placed signage at the site. We put it out in social media. We put it into the Works Week. We've contacted all the Metro Council people. I can tell you that Metro Council people are getting calls of concern about it. We're concerned about it too. There is a potential new location at EP Tom Sawyer Park, but that is quite a ways away. And, I think that barring finding another place really soon, we would probably want to go ahead and put this at EP Tom Sawyer Park if we can finalize all the details on that. I don't think that it would preclude us from opening another site if we can find one at a later date. As it is right now, the center is closing on the 28th. We will remove our dumpsters early on the 29th. And we will position a modified duty person out there the rest of the week to hand out flyers and to notify people and to keep people from just putting the stuff on the ground. I think that there will be some of that occurs, and we'll just have to deal with it as it happens.
I hate to bring this up because I don't want to wish bad luck. Did we move a dumpster out of EP Tom Sawyer before because of illegal dumping at the dumpster?
We did. And we believe that this time we're in a much better position. Where it was located previously was off the beaten path and really in a place that was conducive to illegal dumping. The roll-off dumpsters they seem to have attracted illegal dumping for some reason. People think that's a place that they can go do it. So in this time, we're talking about the entrance that is either off of Frey's Mill. It's more along the paths where people would see them and people would be less likely to dump, or the entrance off of Hurstbourne, and which is also another visible location. The other part of this that makes it where we're getting less illegal dumping is the better signage. I think the other dumpsters were confusing. They had too many signs on them. The signage here, thanks to Karen and her team, is much more clear on what is acceptable and what is not. And then thirdly, we're able to place surveillance cameras where we need to. The Fairdale Recycling Center was getting just beat to death with illegal dumping. We were having to take a packer truck out there every day. Since we put the cameras up out there, and we've impounded probably 3 to 4 to 5 vehicles and cited many more, we haven't had to go out there in weeks. So, being able to put up surveillance cameras out here, Bob, being able to have these other dumpsters, I think we're going to have a much better luck as far as preventing this illegal dumping out there.
Yeah, you guys may have already taken a look at this, but the park has a, I guess you want to call it a headquarters building that's on Frays Hill Road. That's kind of around the corner from the Frays Hill Road entrance, going back into that bike area back there. I don't know how the park would be amenable to having recycling dumpsters over close to their quote unquote headquarters, but that would be even more visible. And I know the parking lot's lit up pretty well, but I can't point to it here, but you see where your cursor is now?
I got you this short thing.
Move it up to Frays Hill Road.
Right
Move
side.
it up. Right there. Now move it right. Right there is a building that's their more or less park headquarters, or park administration building.
Yeah, this was one of the sites that we're considering there. It's actually pretty good. It's already got some poles for surveillance cameras. It's big enough that we can move our truck around. So that is a possibility. The other location in EP Tom Sawyer is, let me back up just a little bit. This lot right here, which is off of North Hurstbourne. So if you kind of zoom out a little bit, you can see this location and this location. The interchange off of 65 is here, which is accessible to most of those people that are coming out of 40245, which is almost 70% of the people that utilize it are on the outside of that Gene Schneider, but pretty far away. And then you also have North Hurstbourne, which is a really good connector to that part of town as well. It's not as good as where we were at Urton Lane. Are we going to lose recyclers? Absolutely. But they're it's better than nothing at the moment. And it doesn't mean that we can't add another site closer to Urton Lane if we can find one. So still working on it. But it's looking like EP Tom Sawyer might have to be utilized at least for a while.
Well, even though it's a little distance away from Urton Lane, it's still better than abandoning that whole area altogether.
I agree. Any other questions about this? Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda was listed as retreat. And the reason that I wanted to bring this up is because I want to kind of use the retreat as a way for us to kind of guide our thinking for the 5-year solid waste management plan. As you guys know from previous meetings, it is due to the state by November 1st, and it's a long planning process that needs to take place. It's broken out into these chapters, which is collection, disposal, recycling, reduction, open dumps, litter, facility siting, which is really handled by planning and design, and enforcement. Most of those were really our biggest areas is collection, disposal, recycling, and litter. That's the biggest focus. For each one of those sections, we always do a description of the current system. That's a requirement. And then we do an analysis of strengths and weaknesses. And after that, when we agree on that, then we create an action plan and implementation schedule for the next 5 years and what we're going to do and when we hope to do it. So that is the process for the 5-year solid waste management plan. So the idea for this is, number one, because this is, we have to move this along a little bit. The staff would like to draft the system descriptions and the strengths and weaknesses to bring to the board and committee if needed to kind of come to an agreement. That's the system. This is the strengths. This is the weaknesses. After we're in agreement with that at another meeting, we would come back and give draft some potential action plans and a potential implementation schedule for each of those chapters. We would bring that back to the board, and we would go to a retreat where we can get into the fine details of those things. And the hope is that we would go into that, we would spend a great deal of time determining where we're going to go as a waste district for the next 5 years. We can look at the key items that we want to focus on in the next 5 years. We come out of that retreat, obviously we would have hopefully somewhat of a plan that we can go to a public comment period, public notice that we have the draft plan, and that gives the public time to review it. It gives them time to write written comment to the plan, and 30 days or 31 days or 32 days after that, then we have a public hearing to where the public can come in and give their input as well. After that, the board makes a decision to adopt the plan as it's written, amend the plan, and depending upon what the amendment is, it may need to go back out to another 30-day public comment period. The state will generally tell us what we need to do there. So I would like to use the retreat as part of our 5-year planning process. So that means that it would probably be at least 2 to 3 months away. And it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that we would do at our retreat, because it would be nice to meet people in person. It would be nice to kind of talk about where we are at with the waste district, get to know each other again. And we can discuss the financials and, how we would want to spend that excess money that we discussed earlier, and any other things that we want to do at that retreat. But that is kind of what we have kind of talked about internally as a process that we wanted to pitch to you guys, and just wanted to get your opinion if this makes sense.
Yeah, I'll start off. I don't see a problem with your plan that you've laid out here. I think one of the things you're going to have to do while you're doing part 1 and part 2, looking at these dots here, is figuring out how to actually do a retreat. Because if we get us all, it's like as we mentioned before, if we get us all together, that becomes a public meeting. So we have to figure out how we do that and don't tie it up too much with how we get where public comment comes in, where it doesn't come in, We obviously have to have public comment. We want public comment. But we've also got to follow the open meetings laws as we do the retreat. So, but I personally don't see a problem. I think you all have thought this out pretty well about how we go into this planning process.
You're right in that it is an open meeting type of meeting because we will have a quorum. We've talked about we would not take a vote at that meeting. It would just basically be informational only. So we can discuss, we can kind of give guidance, but we're not voting on anything. We're just discussing it. We can come back at the next actual meeting and do any voting that we need.
And it could be, the retreat itself could generate another meeting, because if we, as a board, come up with objections or changes or suggestions to your draft potential action plan, it's going to require you to go back and rework that and then bring it back to us again. So, yeah. Right. What's everybody else think?
Is there anything in the open meetings law that will allow us to go into a closed session for planning? We can start an open meeting and go into closed session for planning and then come back into an open meeting again?
No, I don't. I think the only reason we can go into closed session is to discuss legal matters.
Yeah, it's legal matters and personnel matters, I believe, is your exemptions there. Although I can look and see if the exemptions, if there are any exemptions in there that would allow us to do that. But I really don't think that there is. Brandon, you're an attorney, so if you want to jump in and give your opinion on that, please do.
Sorry for folks who don't know me. I'm a former Metro Council member in the same public, so sort of familiar with the public meetings law. And I think the personnel and litigation exceptions are the only ones that would apply in this case, not planning. That's basically policy making.
Bob, this is Bob Lee. I got a issue. I think you were kind of touching on it in regards to my comments, and that's it would seem like we should have some review process from some shareholders other than staff or other than Metro government prior to or in between the number one, where the staff drafts the system description and strength, and then right after that, the staff drafts potential action plans and implementation. I would like to see some kind of planning process review process to where some other people get involved as far as shareholders go.
Let me ask you a question, Pete. Where or have you thought about where you're going to or how you're going to utilize, or if you can utilize, the advisory committee in this process?
Well, my plan is to go back and look at the last plan. I think that the collection systems and strengths and weaknesses are not going to really have changed too much from then. And I believe that having those at an advisory committee with existing people there, that we've got a pretty good representative sample of industry people and stakeholders at those meetings. I think the idea that we had of creating the descriptions, strengths and weaknesses, and then coming back to the board would ensure that we all have to agree to what is written before we move to the next step. And obviously at any point in there, the board can say, well, we need to run this by the advisory committee. And that is fine with me. We don't want to create things in a vacuum, but we also want to be able to move things along because we don't want to get up against the wall in time. So using an existing language is one way to do that. And I don't want to exclude stakeholders, and if stakeholders want to be involved in it, I sure do applaud that. but also want to make sure that we're moving things along, but having checkpoints and milestones in between so we're not moving forward if something's not right.
In that regard, Pete, I've got a couple of questions. One is that what is the time frame? The public hearing, did you say was 3-4 months away or 6? What is the time frame, and what creates the time frame?
So the 5-year plan is due in Frankfurt as a required submission by our community, this board, by November 1st.
Okay.
You want, so you kind of start to work backwards from there. If we have to have a 30-day public comment period, then we're talking about October, as we need to have a draft plan complete and ready for the public. You don't want to go into that 1st of October with, trying to complete something. So I would think that we definitely want to be getting pretty close by middle of August, so that we can get it done. It may get to where we're having to have additional meetings to be able to get it done, and we can do that. It's a really important document, but I'm trying to work back from when it is due to the state.
I see. The other thing that I was going to comment on is it, with the existing strengths and weaknesses. I mean, we're talking about a plan or a process that's what, 2 or 3 years old, and 5 years old. And why wouldn't we anticipate that they would actually change? I mean, we've been through a extraordinary time in which we had the COVID issue and just everything else. And I would think that we would want some comments from some people in order to make sure that we're going in the right direction instead of using old 5-year-old issues and comments of strengths and weaknesses that are already in the plan itself.
Well, I didn't. Excuse me. I didn't read Pete's comments, and I hope Pete didn't mean them this way. I don't think that we're just going to take the strengths and weaknesses that were in the last 5-year plan. I think that they're going to review those strengths and weaknesses pretty thoroughly. And it may very well be that they haven't changed over the last 5 years. But I don't think we're just automatically going to start from there. At least I would hope not. Is that how, Pete? What do you have to say about that?
That's correct. I mean, you would have to see what is written there. And what I would do is I would encourage people now to go and look at that 5-year solid waste management plan and address any concerns to me that you may have, so that we can kind of take that into account. And we can get that to everybody so that they can see it. We can get it at the next advisory committee meeting. One thing to keep in mind, though, is we want to get it done fairly quickly, and not necessarily using the exact language, but as a framework. I think that in general, the wording in that old plan will probably be fairly close. Yeah, there's certainly been changes in these 5 years.
So
I'm gonna ask for an indulgence here. Could we just pause the meeting for a minute? I need to run and check on something that involves a possible wallet that was left here by somebody who needs to catch a plane. Can I have 5 minutes real quick to run into the next room? Does anybody have a problem with that?
Bob, I have to leave at 10 till, so I just won't be here probably after you get back.
What time? Oh, I'll be back for then. Hang on.
Pete, while we're pausing, this is Susan Hart. Can I ask a question?
Is it pertaining to the discussion of the meeting?
Yes.
I would probably want to hold it until Bob is back.
Sure. Okay.
If it's a matter of process or something like that, is not necessarily substantive to that, maybe I can do it. You can go ahead and ask your question. And
Okay, so I'm reading the chart, and your staff is going to draft a system description, strengths and weaknesses based on what we have already seen in the 5-year plan. And then when this material is presented to the 109 board at the retreat, I'm not sure I understand what you're going to be expecting us to
Yeah,
do. Are we
sure.
going to go through section by
Okay.
section and
Okay.
approve the
Bye.
wording, prepare the changes? I'm not really sure what I, as a member of the board, will be expected to do.
Bob, are you officially back?
Yeah, I'm back. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
So what is the expectation for members of the board when we bring this back to them? One is to listen and really kind of either ensure that what is written is accurate. And you don't, and I understand that members of the board are not in the solid waste industry. So you would rely on the advisory committee to say, yeah, that's pretty accurate, and we can have a discussion about that. But I think you guys need to be involved in that discussion. So when it does come to a point where we're voting on a resolution to adopt, that it's not the first time that you've heard it either.
So in preparing, go back over the 5-year plan that we did some time ago to refresh our understanding of what the program is and how your changes might impact that?
Well, in the first section, it is, I'm not sure that I understood, but we're not really at this point making any recommendations. We're just trying to understand the system.
Okay.
Can I, pardon me, Susan, can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah.
Because before Bob leaves, Pete, can you make sure that in taking step one here, drafting the system description, strengths and weaknesses, can you make sure that you have the advisory committee involved in that? Because that's where we can get a lot of participation in that from the stakeholders.
Absolutely.
And I think maybe, I don't think I'm overstepping my bounds on behalf of the board, because we're always asking a lot of the advisory committee members. But I would suggest that if getting them involved at that point puts a burden on them for some of the stuff that they're already working on, we could put off for several meetings the stuff they're already working on to make sure that they have participation in this process.
Yes, sir. And I would, one of the reasons that I say that we come back to the 109 board is because I don't typically take things directly to the advisory committee. I'll let you guys task us with taking it to the advisory committee. But if you're giving me the okay to go directly to them without coming through you, I can do that. And I don't think that there would be any problem. In fact, I would think that this 5-year solid waste management plan needs to be the priority above all that we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So putting stuff off, I think is fine.
Yeah. Well, if no board members have any problem with that, I would like to take the chairman's privilege to direct Pete or direct staff that we make sure that we have the advisory committee involved to the extent that's necessary to make sure that we get good stakeholder participation in that drafting of the current conditions and systems.
Bob, this is Bob Lee. I appreciate that, and I think that's the thing to do, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And I'm sorry to have interrupted you, Susan. Let's go back to, I just did that because I knew Bob had to get out of here.
Yes.
Right.
And I appreciate it all, and I'm sorry I have to leave early. So long.
Okay.
Good
Bye.
night.
Susan, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. And I'm glad you said that because his company definitely is a stakeholder in what we're examining. I just am not sure I understand what the board's function is going, or what I can contribute to that.
Well, I guess when the board is working on the first part, what I'm going to do as a board member is go back and look at the old plan from the standpoint of what did we propose to do 5 years ago, and have we done it, or how well have we done it?
Yes.
I'm going to leave the determination of the actual strengths and weaknesses of the system out there right now, because a lot of that involves statistics and actual performances by various entities on the street. I'm going to leave that personally up to the staff. I'm going to be looking at what the current 5-year plan says and how do we think we did on that.
Okay.
This is the most important function of this board, is this 5-year solid waste management plan. This is where we want to go for the next 5 years. And it's different than the 10-year study, because the study really didn't have any strength to it when it came to, I mean, it was basically information and recommendations. This is where the board wants to do, and kind of sets out the true course of the waste district and Jefferson County solid waste management for the next 5 years. So there's a whole lot of learning to do. This is not something that we do all the time, obviously, because it's every 5 years. I don't think any of the board members, except for Bob and Bob, have ever really been through a 5-year solid waste management plan development. And this will only be my third.
I got another question, but I'm going to ask other board members if they have questions or comments on this, because I don't want to keep monopolizing the speaking here. This hypothetical question, Pete, if we get into drafting a plan that could possibly be, I don't know what it would be right on the top of my head, but trying to make sure we get adequate public participation and everything. If we propose a plan, or if staff proposes a plan and the board ends up going with a plan that could be for some reason or other controversial, I get my bottom line question is, has anybody ever been through this before where they ask the state, say, hey, we need another couple of months to make sure we get adequate public comment?
I don't know the answer to that, Bob, but it's one that I could find out. I know that it's statutory that, we submit it by that certain date. I'm not sure if they have enough leniency or flexibility to be able to grant that extension. So I will have to ask the state's local assistance branch.
Yeah, I forgot about the fact that that's statutory as opposed to some of the other things that the state asks us to do. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like what we need to do in that case is that we need to have it done before October 1st. We need to have it done by September 1st, so we give ourselves enough time to have all the public input that we'll need.
Yeah, good point. Okay. Answered my question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we need to vote on this, but does any of the board members have an objection to the basic process that staff has laid out here?
I think it looks good.
Yeah, I do too. Hearing no objections to following the process, I guess, Pete, start.
Okay, we'll get started. Karen?
Next item.
Excuse me, Bob,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a meeting at 7 that I'm going to have to leave this meeting for. So I might miss some of the staff reports, but I did want to report that I had said I would get in touch with the mayor's office about my appointment. They assured me that because I have been on the board I continue to serve for more than 2 months, that I automatically am reappointed and it does not have to go through any other channels. So that's the situation with my appointment on the board. I am on for the rest of this term for a 4-year term. So I guess it's 4 year, either 4 years or 2 years. I'm not sure.
It's 2.
2. Okay. I'm on for the rest of this 2-year term then. So I just wanted you all to know that because I am going to have to leave at 7.
Okay, well, glad to hear that. Just if Mary Rose is leaving, does that put us into a problem with the quorum? And do we have anything that needs to be voted on before she leaves?
I also believe by 7, the Susan Hart.
I guess then we're probably at a point where we don't really have to go on. There's nothing that's pressing that we would have to vote on. It was more informational as much as anything.
Okay, well, I just looking at this, we apologize to the advisory committee chairman and members who may have, and to Karen, who may have prepared reports. Or would it be appropriate for the remaining board members just to hear those reports? Or do we need?
We probably need to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. And if anyone wants to stick around and we can kind of go through this informational stuff, that's fine with me. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, I guess we'll just go ahead and adjourn the meeting because I would kind of like the entire board to hear the pop-off, drop-off report. I think that's important. And the rest of the board probably ought to hear the advisory committee report too. So why don't we just, if we're going to lose our quorum, why don't we just adjourn and we'll add these items into the board meeting for next month.
Sure.
Before we go, could I make a comment about Karen's panel discussion on WFPL this past week?
Sure.
I was so pleased. Karen is so knowledgeable and poised in answering questions and dealing with the other people on the panel. I was so proud of her ability to communicate what we're doing and just to be so well-spoken. So I was very proud of her.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Susan.
Yep.
Congratulations, Karen. Thank you, Karen. With nothing else going on, I guess we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Deethra makes the motion. A second.
Second.
Second by Mary Rose. Meeting is adjourned at 6:59 p.m. and we'll pick it up again next month. Thank you all very much for your time and attendance.
Thank you all. Sorry, I have to 7.
Bye.